Joining us now is Greg Palast. He's an investigative journalist who's been on the BBC, Rolling Stone, Guardian, and he's been tracking purge votes in Georgia. Boy, did that wind up becoming relevant in this election, and it's still relevant for who's controlling the Senate. So Greg, welcome back to the Young Turks.
Glad to be with you.
All right, so Greg, let's first talk about the irony of Brad Raffensperger, as it turns out, is how you pronounce it. Yes. So he's the Georgia Secretary of State, and now the right wing is convinced that he is working with Joe Biden, Bernie Sanders, and the ghost of Hugo Chavez to help Democrats steal elections. Can you tell us what the reality is for Raffensperger?
Okay. Well, let me tell you, and that really is his name, Purger. And Raffensperger, and by the way, I do want to warn you that he has called me, Brad Raffensperger, the Secretary of State, has called Greg Palast a well-known Stacey Abrams shill. Okay, guilty as charged. Next, I've been called worse. Happy to take the title, but here's what's really happening with this guy. He's thrown, he can't save Trump. He stole as many votes as he could. I'll be blunt about it. But Trump is gone. He has to save Mitch McConnell's job. There are, remember, and I'm sure everyone listening to Young Turks knows this, of course, that there is a life and death battle runoff for 2 Senate seats that will determine which party controls the US Senate. And that is Raffensperger's job, to deliver it by hook or crook, and it's mostly crook. I've been working now, Cenk, in Georgia for 7 years. I didn't know why, but I guess a higher authority decided I better be prepared for this moment. So 7 years of investigating Raffensperger and his predecessor, a character named Brian Kemp, who now has the Purloin governor's seat, which he stole from Stacey Abrams in 2018. But Raffensperger is taking the game of Jim Crow sophisticated techniques to knock out the Democratic vote to a whole new level.
Yeah, so people are mistaking him for some sort of hero of the resistance, but not only did they do the purge before Kemp's election, and that was when Kemp was Secretary of State, and he did his own purge for his own election for governor. Then Raffensperger comes in and he does another voter purge, and now it sounds like they're planning another one before the special election. Is that possible, Greg?
Yeah, so let me explain. This guy, when you say a purge, understand, he's removed over 1/3 of a million voters in the last 2 years leading up to this election. 1/3 of a million. And I can tell you, 198,357 of those people exactly have been illegally and wrongly purged. I had a team of 15 top experts, and we even hired the United States Post Office to help us on this. And we have 198,000 people illegally and wrongly removed. We've been sending out messages, postcards. I've been working with, by the way, that report was issued by the ACLU. Then the ACLU went to Raffensperger and said, look, here's the names of the people. Here's the people. You got to put these people back on the rolls. This is straight up violation of federal law. And he played games, he's resisted. He said, he had 90 days, which is really cute. It went right past the election. But of course, now we have another election. So this week, we passed that 90-day mark, and he is now subject to a federal lawsuit. I've beat this guy in court, in federal court in February, by the way, when he's trying to hide the information on his illegal purges of voter. And when you say purges of voter, let me explain what that means. It means your registration's been canceled. Including, for example, they say, you have moved. Well, yeah, if you don't live in Atlanta, you can't vote in Atlanta legally. But that included, for example, I was at Atlanta polling station, included a 92-year-old woman, Martin Luther King's cousin, 92 years old, voting same place 50 years. They said she'd moved out of Atlanta. No, I went to the house where she supposedly had moved out of. And there was a picture of Martin Luther King on the wall, her cousin. So she'd been in that house 50 years with King at that house, coming every Sunday for brunch after the Ebenezer Baptist sermons. But she was guilty of voting while black. So was Raheem Shabazz, guilty of voting while black. This continues on and on. We did an analysis of these lists. It's African American voters, Hispanic voters, Asian American voters are hit hard, and especially young voters. In other words, voters of color. And the color's blue. So with Black Voters Matter and with some of the frontline groups in Georgia, We are bulking up for major action to protect these voters right now.
Yeah, so I feel like Raffensperger is barely able to contain himself, Kemp as well, because Trump and all of their zombies are now attacking them, saying, why didn't you steal the election for us after we lost? And I think that what Raffensperger wants to say to them is, no, you schmucks, we steal them before the elections, not after the elections. And you have no idea how much I tried to help steal this election, and I'm not getting proper credit for it.
Right? Well, yeah, but he's trying to make himself a martyr. Remember, all the people that say, "Oh, we're going to boycott the runoffs." None of these are Georgians. They're nutcases like Roger Stone. But here's the problem: he's not done. This past Sunday, we caught him 3 o'clock on a Sunday afternoon before Thanksgiving week. He sneaks out a new regulation that basically says if you want to register to vote in Georgia, you have to register a car. Like what? We caught him, okay? And our team caught him, and he put it into the regulations 8 a.m. the next Monday morning. First of all, changing rules within 90 days of an election is a violation of federal law. That doesn't bother them because they figure federal law, kind of bounces off the Georgia borders. Like I said, I've been doing this 7 years now, watching these characters. Can you imagine? So now they can't make you buy a car to vote. They would if they could. They can't make you buy a car to vote. That would be the most expensive poll tax in American history, which is unconstitutional. Rather, they're saying if you don't have a car registered in Florida, then you're probably not a Georgia resident. You're an illegal voter sneaking in to vote because you haven't registered your car. Well, I think that they know very well who doesn't have cars. Low-income people, urban people, people in Atlanta who use public transportation, people can't afford a car, and of course, students. I know that this affected one Georgia voter, my daughter in Savannah. And I can tell you, this is the type of game that they play, and they sneak it in. So they sneak it in, and that's just one of the new games that they're playing.
Greg, I don't understand it because they can't require you to have a car, like you said, the world's largest poll tax. So what is this regulate? And people who are registered are already registered. Is it for new registrants? And if it is, if you don't have a car, what's your second option for being able to register to vote?
Well, there's a couple things. Number one, no, they say they're only going to apply to new registrants, but that's what we're trying to do, get young people registered. For example, there's 23,000 young people who turned 18 since the general election, who will be 18 by the runoff on January 5. If they try to register, you're talking about an 18-year-old, how many have cars? Now, again, what they're claiming is that they can use that as evidence that you don't actually reside in Georgia, that you just registered purely to vote in this runoff election. I asked him, I couldn't use my own name, I had to use a cutout in a Zoom meeting, of course, because they would never respond to me. Do you have a single case, one case of an out-of-state voter voting or attempting to register or having mailed in their ballot already? Or in the general, do you have a single case of any out-of-state voter illegally voting? And by the way, if you find one, we'll go and arrest them for you because it is a federal crime. They didn't have one single instance. You know what they had? Some guy named Andrew Yang, because Yang said he was going down to campaign in Georgia. So that was their excuse, that they were warned by Andrew Yang's statement that he's coming down to Georgia, that he was going to illegally vote and bring thousands, if not millions of voters. I mean, this is the game that they're playing. And they know if they sneak it out, if we don't catch them, if we don't bust it. Now, again, we're taking action. I should say, for example, the Andrew Goodman Foundation. If you remember Goodman, Cheney, and Schwerner, the three civil rights workers who were lynched, the families have a foundation which protects young voters because so many young voters don't have cars. It's actually a violation of the 26th Amendment. But again, what does the 26th Amendment mean in Georgia? I don't think any amendment means anything except the second there. But don't assume we're not fighting it. A lot of it is to tell people, look, if they block your registration, here's what they want to do. They say, oh, don't worry, you can go to a hearing. Now we've got COVID. When do you get the hearing? In February? To get yourself on the voter rolls.
Yeah.
So it's okay. You don't lose your vote. You just get a hearing sometime next year.
Yeah, and if they say that the car is is not absolutely necessary, but is evidence that you don't live in the state, it allows for selective enforcement. So if I think you're gonna vote for a Democrat, I say, well, the fact that you don't have a car, I find to be dispositive. But if I think you're gonna, in the suburbs and you're gonna vote for a Republican, it's not that big a deal, I'll let you vote. So it's a giant problem. Just last quick question here, because we're about to run out of time, Greg. Through Fair Fight Action and through your work, of the people that were, the 198,000 that were illegally purged, do you know how many got put back on the voter rolls and were able to vote?
Well, with Black Voters Matter, ACLU and others, and frontline groups down there, we know that we actually returned several thousands, tens of thousands back to the rolls, but it's not good enough because most people who aren't purged have no idea. They just show up and said, scram, or here's a provisional ballot and you can wipe your behind with it because they're not gonna count it if you're not registered. You can fill it out. So that's one of the reasons we are gonna be taking action this week, as much for the legal process as to get the word out. And by the way, get ready, there's gonna be some big stars who are gonna be stepping in with PSAs, et cetera. It's a full court press. It's mostly about telling people, check your registration. I don't care if you've been registered 50 years like Martin Luther King's cousin, you better check it now. Go to savemyvote2020.org, savemyvote2020.org. See if you've been purged, and until December 7th, you can register or re-register in Georgia.
All right, Greg Palast doing great work down in Georgia on this issue. Thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate it.
You're very welcome. Thanks, Cenk.
Thanks for watching this free clip of the Young Turks. Don't forget to become a TYT member today. For more exclusive content, join now at tyt.com/join.